All right, well, good morning. We're excited to kick off this session and talk about, I guess we're gonna start and kick off with Erin Johnson, who will be sharing with us results from the Council on Agribusiness Soft Essential Skills Survey, and some of the reporting that he's done so far, some of the data analysis. And then we'll be joined by an industry expert. We also have a student on our panel, and I will be providing a little bit of an academic viewpoint and response to these survey results. But more than anything, we really want this to be a collaborative session. We would love to have feedback, learn from all of your experiences as well, either through academia, as students yourselves, or in industry. So we're excited to have all of you here this morning and appreciate any feedback and interaction that we can have as we move forward. So Erin, we'll let you start us off.
So do we want I want to just double check. Folks online, can you hear us okay? Of course, I can't see you, so. Well, we got one thumbs up from Jennifer. Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, group. All right, so Erin Johnson moved to Kansas State recently. Been working with Scott Downey from Purdue and Rodney Holcomb from Oklahoma State on updating, Massey Casavaras from Purdue as well. A tremendous resource and assistance on this project. So in 1987, Kerry Litzenberg and published a paper with Schneider dealing with what they called the AgriMass, agricultural, I can't remember what MASS stands for. They published that paper and is basically talking about what do industry folks want, and we are trying to replicate or update that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Here we go. But before I jump into the content, I want to make a special thanks to the CASES steering committee. So CASES stands for the Council on Agricultural Business or Agribusiness Soft/Essential Skills. And that is a loose group of individuals that have gotten together to give perspective on where do we take this idea. Obviously, we're starting with this survey, but they came up with the council. And the idea with the council or the confab. Make you look at, sorry, we're gonna make him sick if I keep going here. Thank you. They also wanted to, special thanks to agcareers.com. They assisted in distributing our survey and continue to be partners, valuable partners as we progress with the process. And then the confab participants, we did if you will, call it a pre-conference with WERA 72 before they took on the content that they had for the year. The day before we met in Portland and had an online contingent as well as in person and had some really good discussions. So So I'm going to talk a little bit about the survey results. I'm not going to hit in depth, but I'm going to give you a high level. What are we talking about, and what are we thinking of, and what did we see? We're going to talk about the outcomes from the confab. And again, we're going to talk about generalities or general ideas there, and really trying to move to where do we want to go? What's the focus for the future? But I don't want to go too far ahead on that because I want to hear the context, and then really honestly, the outcome of this discussion hopefully will inform where do we go from here as an academy. So the survey, we're modernizing the AgriMass survey that I talked about. We've adjusted the language a little bit. We've added one extra section that is general higher education experience. The general higher education experience really comes from discussions that we had about, well, it's great to have an internship. It's great to have a president leadership of a club or something. And so we wanted to see how much did the industry really prefer or value that in their work or in their evaluation of students. So we launched this in May, and as of May 23rd, that's what the numbers are outside of the parentheses. The parentheses number is what we had according to last night. So we had 601 agribusiness professionals. We're up to 668. We really, well, let me keep going with this. Agribusiness and Ag-Econ faculty administrators, we have 106, 121 last night. And then the students, obviously that number is incredibly low. We think we can do a lot better. We launched this really literally at the front end of May. So we think that a lot of faculty, a lot of students outside of a prime window for them to really have the bandwidth or interest in participating. So we're going to revisit that in the fall. The faculty one for sure, and the students, we're going to try to work some details there, how we can get more students engaged. And honestly, we like having 668 respondents, but the reality is we need a lot more if we want to slice this data, and you'll see why I mean that in a minute. So we're going to, we'd love to have had, our idea was we would have throughout the summer, we would have all the responses that we needed, and we could start writing our results up and getting a paper published in the ETR. But we need to revisit that survey and try to push those numbers a little bit more, which we might be leaning on y'all or looking for help from y'all to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the results, but they're preliminary. Keep that in mind. And really, it's on the May 23rd numbers, the numbers from that I pulled down last night. Honestly, there's Massey did the first poll, and she did some fantastic stuff, but I could not follow what she did on the data clean, and I didn't want to mess that up, because if I get in the way, she just has to fix my problems or my faults. So didn't want to saddle her with that. So in addition, because those numbers are so small in the students, I'm not going to report on those. We want to get more before we really say. But you can see here, the idea is that we want to look at what does industry value, what do faculty think is important, and what do students think they need to be studying. Hopefully there's an overlap there. We'll see. So the individuals that we have in this is, we've got a good collection of individuals so far. They do have a smattering of education. Honestly, I'm surprised that we had 27% on master's level. That kind of fits with some things I've been seeing and thinking and feeling, but that's fantastic that we have that many. We even got a couple PhDs to fill out the application or fill out the survey, but you know, we have a good smattering of individuals. And then the job level, they're everywhere from the entry level to mid management. We had a lot of upper management folks take the survey for us. We'd like to probably push that a little bit more on the middle management and entry level. So that's one of the things we're going to focus on when we reload the survey. Number of employees, we had a really good distribution here. Doesn't surprise me. I was worried that on that more than 10,000, we would be swamped with those. And we do have quite a bit, almost 20%. But I don't think they're going to be such a big group that they're going to sway the results that much. Annual sales, this is where we do get into some of the bigger kind of skewed data, obviously. We'll look at what that's going to mean later on. And then the companies, they're mostly from the crops and the inputs. But we tried to get from the breadth of the ag and food industry. So we're going to try to go back and make sure we really focus on those groups that we didn't get before. So the reach of the company, their business scope, a lot of, we had locals, we had international, we had national, we had regionals, pretty good distribution there. And the targets, where do they target their hiring from? Really, you can see here, they target specific regions. And I think a lot of that has to do, when I talk with folks, they don't go back necessarily. They might have mechanisms to take people back to their alma mater to recruit from there. But really what I've noticed, at least prior to this, was the recruiters would go to where they want to hire in. In other words, especially with millennials, they just don't want to travel. They don't want to move away from mom and dad's or where they grew up. An hour away is good. 2 hours is horrible. Going across country is absolutely unheard of. Not always the case, but that's a lot of their thinking. So the recruitment, are they involved with that? 50-50 split on whether they were or not, and then look at how they were involved. And then where do they choose their college visits? And again, here it's the reputation of the program really takes a lot, the location of the job. So we do have to pay attention to quality. I think in the long and short of it is we have to pay attention to that quality, even if we have a proximity to a lot of these agribusinesses. They still have a lot of options and opportunities. And I forget who I was talking with. I think it was Vicki Salen. She said that she's been doing some work in this area, and she's really feeling, or she learned through her work that these individuals, these companies are going to other places like the college businesses at our campuses, or if they think that they'll try both Ag Econ and College of Business, and they'll start leaning one way or another when relative to the quality of what they see. So that essentially sets up the motivation of what are we trying to do and why are we trying to do that, the survey. We also looked at the faculty and administrators in Ag Econ, Agribusiness. We had some department heads, mostly just teaching faculty. That's our biggest portion that filled it out, but we do have a representation from our research, a little bit from our extension. And we asked what is their primary appointment in this one. So there might be somebody that put in that they were the teaching faculty, but they also have some outreach responsibilities and some research expectations. So we didn't capture that. The faculty rank, everything from new to on up to not applicable. The gender split there. So we do have some distribution, very heavy on the male side. We need to look at how we can adjust that when we go. Where do a lot of their students get placed? Again, a lot of them going back to that inputs and crops, field, agricultural production, crop production is a heavy area. Some of these spots, my formatting, again, I forgot that when I do this, they crunch it to where you can't see all of them. The ag production.
Oh, I thought that's the second.
I can tell you. I'll look it up.
Okay.
So there's a lot here. This is pretty thick, and I don't want to belabor any point. What I'm trying to get at was big picture items. So we're going to walk through, and I'm just going to show you comparative graphs with the faculty versus the professionals, their responses, stacked them on the same graph. I ordered them from most important to least important relative to what the professional said. So you'll notice with professionals, the blue, it has a decreasing value. On this particular one here, you'll notice that there's 21 items in this particular category of business and economic competencies. Out of those 21, you can see it's the faculty put a heavy emphasis, higher scores. They weren't required, or they weren't restricted on no, this isn't a ranking. This is just tell us how important it is. You can see that faculty had a pretty good idea that all of these things were important, right? Which, if you've ever
Just
been
like in the classroom.
I was going to say, not only in the classroom, but you go into a faculty meeting talking about curriculum. Well, you can't do that. This is incredibly important. We have to have it. Well, when did we use it last? Not sure, but it's incredibly important. So
I'm actually surprised faculty put micro that low.
Where is micro? So, well, yeah. Well, again, coming down to what is, they still found it pretty valuable nonetheless, right? So if we take those 20, so what I didn't want to just leave you with that mess of bowl of spaghetti to look at there. So I just took the 7, and then so the first 7, second 7, last 7, and you can see the macroeconomics was very high. That's why my brain was trying to go. I knew I had it up here. Macroeconomics was very high. according to the faculty, but it's a little bit less important. And in fact, as you go through here, one of the things that stands out in all of these items is, with the exception of 2 of them, they're not close. And one of them, the macroeconomics, the professionals thought that was no. Oh, that's not fair. Okay, so memorize this list of 21. The first one is the first 7. But so sorry about that. I will correct those. And if anybody wants those, I can get these out to you. But again, you come back to, you look at this, and it really does point out that there are gaps. And faculty think very highly of this category, as we would expect. We are trained in those areas for sure. And then computer and MIS competencies. Again, boy, I need an editor on this. My slides or my items dropped off here. But again, the faculty think these are very important, and industry. In fact, I had an anecdotal piece there as I talked to somebody in industry, and they basically said, can they open a computer, and are they familiar with it? And that's what we care about, and that's it. They don't have to be proficient in Word. They don't have to be, in fact, if we need them to do anything like that, we're probably going to punch them into some sort of training program. And then the technical competencies, these are fields, more specialized field areas. And this really gets back to, at Idaho, we had a section in our curriculum that tech ag electives, they had to take 12 credits of tech ag electives. Sounds great, but when you find out that it's anything in the ag econ or the College of Ag that isn't the ag econ subject, that means that they can do things like welding. Nothing's wrong with welding, but 12 credits of welding is pretty high when you're talking about a college degree relative to a technical degree. Communications competencies. This is where our professionals start to raise the bar a little bit more, but we think as an academy, we think a little bit more important of those topics than do industry. And the switch here really comes in these personal competencies, things like their positive work attitude, their ability to be self-starters, those things. Those are some of the things that they're looking for. We think that they're looking for when they do these interviews. In fact, when you talk to students, a lot of their discussions with these folks are in that category. And then previous experiences, and you can see there we have some. But honestly, the professionals like that farm work component because they understand the rhythm and flow of agriculture. But I also know that a number of recruiters that don't shy away if they still can find a student that a student that they want to hire because they have other factors, they'll still go with that. It's just one feather in somebody's hat if they do have that. And then experience or achievement in competencies, achievements, things like the high GPA, the extracurricular activities. We think they're important and they do have a lot of value and do grow the individual's character and abilities. But it doesn't look like that the industry necessarily looks at those as high as we think they do. When we get to the importance of these competencies and we take those categories that I just presented on and you look at them, we had them look at these competencies in 2 ways. One, we had them tell us how important they were. And then the other one, we had them we forced a rank on them. They had to rank them 1 to 7. This is just the scoring. I don't like to hear myself as
I'm trying to.
Just as long as it doesn't start squeaking, we're good. So You got it? Fantastic. All right. So the gap isn't as big as I had actually anticipated it to be. It might be that we only have, we did this on a 5 scale, 5-item scale, 5 being the most important, 1 being the least important. And when we look at this, there's some differences for sure to be looked at and to be concerned with, and we need to separate those out, and we will. But you can see where the faculty look at those computer skills, the general education and technical, and the business economic skills as more important than do the professionals, the emphasis that the professionals put on those. Employment work is we're going to call it a virtual tie or statistical tie, but the personal qualities, these are the character of that individual. That's where the professionals start looking at that different, and definitely in the communication skills. And then when you start to pull out those communication skills, for example, you start to see where the professionals are really honing in on. And it's not the ability to articulate these grand ideas in glorious fashion. It's, can you write a memo? Can you get your point across to your boss? That level of communication skills. But it's critically valuable and important to those individuals when you look at those specific data.
One of the great things about this, I think, is the idea that while there are gaps there, this suggests other research that needs to be done. Are some of the responses the way they are because our graduates are coming out with those skills, and so they don't see a gap? In other words, sometimes I think some of these skill areas are taken for granted because students come out with adequate business and economic skills, and so it becomes slightly less important than the communication skills.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it would have been awesome if we were able to look at this over time.
That's future research.
Well, but if we could have gotten back to somehow and compared that back to the attitudes and perceptions, had some sort of scale that measured that of students coming out of college back in the 1980s versus now, that would have been fantastic. I would love to do that. Maybe we can move it into the future, but you're absolutely right. I've often said, working with my students at Idaho in their program and in their interview, it always seemed in interviews that the degree and their actual major was kind of the ticket to get to the table. What kept them at the table was the communication, the ability to communicate, but also those personal qualities of just being able to show that they have some grit and stick to some task or project. So if you look back in comparison of importance, and this is just going back to the importance component, and this is just a rank order, communication was looked at as very high in 1987 by Litz and Snyder. And so we ordered this relative to how Litzenberg's paper ranked them. We converted theirs to a 5-point scale so we have some comparison. They had it on a 10-point scale. As you can see, if you compare the agribusiness and the professionals and the faculty, you can start to see some differences. Are they statistically different? We need to look into that, but just looking at the raw number, you can start to see that there are some differences. It's just another way of looking at that. But most importantly, what we wanted to do here with this was to go back and look at, have things changed over the last 30 years? And not so much. We flipped the two. The personal qualities are important. Litz found those to be more important in his survey. We got the experience next, and then the business econ has actually stayed about the same. Yeah. So forth. So you can see how it's changed. And so this isn't I wish we had the final to share with everybody. So what I wanted to hit here was this has raised a number of questions. First off, we need to go back and get more data from all walks of life, from the students to the faculty to the, in fact, we want to get so much, get to a level where we can actually compare administrators versus faculty members. Then also we want to make sure we cover the full gamut of the food industry, and we need to go back and push on that. And we've got some ideas of how we're going to do that, just so you know. So that's all to get to the confab. What we did at the confab was we reported the preliminary results from our Agribusiness survey update. We had a discussion with 3 students that were 3 recent graduates from Oregon State. Great discussion, incredible valuable information that they provided us. And then we had a discussion based on our collective thought from the survey findings, the students' comments, and all of our anecdotal evidence that we brought to the table as the collective. And then we broke that, we identified 3 topic areas, and we had breakout sessions and reported back. And the breakout sessions were really what I want to highlight here. So the first section, or the first group that we had, were boundary, scopes, and strategic goals. So in other words, what are we doing, and to what end are we doing this? And so we tasked each group to kind of come up with a frame, kind of what's the general idea of what's going on, but also look at what can be done in this category. What are some of the things, the next steps, kind of concepts. Here was, what is an educated person? What is an educated agribusiness person? It was a piece that we thought really is the question that we could try to answer in this category. We want to pull out a literature review, do a deep dive on what this looks like, and just really look at all angles and aspects of agribusiness education over the years. We think that there's some opportunities, kind of following on the heels of what Scott said, that there's some opportunities to really look at the agrimass and fine tune that, but also get more detail and understanding of what our industry folks are thinking about. And that's where we're looking at maybe doing some focus groups and prying apart some of these components. And then survey for revealed preferences. This was a great idea, actually, where we started, we could start testing and quantifying what are the, what's the trade-off between these personal attributes and the experiences, or their grade in farm and ranch management. What are some of those pieces? Yeah.
Did you adjust for students who probably went through like the pandemic, so like their emotions and so forth? Was that kind of like?
Yeah, we didn't adjust for that at all in this, either in our discussion or questions with our individuals in the professional realm, or with the faculty or students. And that would be a really interesting question. And if we had a better time series, if we had the time series piece, it'd be a fantastic piece to compare that. But really what we're trying to get at is not necessarily the pandemic piece. Significantly have to probably consider for it. But we really want to understand what are these, and what's the industry wanting from our students.
That's a great call out.
Yeah.
Particularly as we get more student responses this fall, to see what the difference, there's a difference between the fall responses and the spring responses.
Yeah, because I think that there's a sense of, when we talk about the skills, there's an emotional intelligence component that when students have been through, and one of the things that I'm finding is that students are tired of Zoom and all of this, and then they're just like, sometimes have emotional breakdowns.
Yeah.
I think from the industry side too, like new hires versus those who were further along in their career, because thinking through who, like on your survey, who was hired in the last 2 years that responded to the industry portion, but they may have different views, especially on the communication and personal interaction. If you could break out your industry.
I think we can do that. I think we've got that question.
Yeah, I think we can.
Well, and then the other thing that would be interesting is comparing those new hires back to what are the students saying, kind of the proxy of, our proxy of what was their previous cohort versus the current cohort, that, even this, yeah, even the seniors are affected by.
We didn't ask work from home kinds of questions, but that would be a similarly interesting.
Right, because I've heard a lot of like new hires, but they start and then they're working from home, they're working via Zoom, so
Yeah.
they've never met their team.
One of the challenges we had in putting the scale together is, you know, we were using as the model this stuff from 1987, and the questions about technology were really not relevant today. And so we did add some things to try to update that so that we could get some more relevant responses, but then you lose the comparison between the best of the top trade.
So one of the pieces that this breakout group looked at, really, they kind of honed in on, okay, what are the boundaries of our profession? What should we be teaching in other words, but also who should be teaching it? Because in some places, there's enough resources to cover a lot of these different topics, and other times the FTE barely covers the requirements, and sometimes it doesn't even cover the requirements that people are teaching more than they were hired for. The bottom line is that what are some of the places which are mission critical, is kind of the general theme of they came out. What are the pieces that we should have in-house, even if we have a Ag Econ program that has 2 people teaching the different classes in it? What are some of the ones that we need to have in-house versus can we ship out to the College of Business or look to our colleagues across campus to help us with? And then asking the question of what can you do with an agribusiness degree, and what is the payoff, were some of the questions they thought were good to consider as we move forward. The fluency, competency, pedagogy group, we kind of added this frame ex post. How do we become more flexible in our curriculum to adapt to changes while maintaining relevance and value to the academy and the industry? In other words, how do we, in this environment where we're not known for our lightning speed, as Rodney has told me before, there's business speed, then there's glacial speed, and somewhere below that is academic speed, right? So we wanted to kind of ask that question: if industry is looking for certain things, how are we able to adjust to those and stay adjusted as we move forward? We need to be thinking about aligning the research and the teaching, or applying the theory to practical components in the classroom. And that was really getting at the idea of making this real to the students, not just an academic exercise or a conceptual concept for them to wrestle with. And then the hierarchy and collective academy practice. If you look at it, College of Business, they think that they're on the top of the food chain. Somewhere in there is the economists and the ag economists. And then you travel down the path a little ways and you get to agribusiness faculty. And Scott had a comment about sales faculty. So that's not to say, and that's not a value statement, that's not to say every program's like that. It's just that's a generalization, and we recognize what generalizations are. We don't want to paint everything that way, but we do recognize what the group was trying to say was agribusiness faculty don't necessarily always have the loudest voice or the most heard voice in all the discussions. So the issues that they raised to consider was things like, how do we recruit students to our courses, the faculty incentives, and part of that dealt with promotion and tenure, concepts of putting more time and energy and effort into the classroom relative to what do you get paid back for in your annual review and your promotion and tenure, but also the faculty incentives of what are the incentives to go to the nth degree, to do the simulation, or to have that essay question on the exam versus another 10 multiple choice questions. Those were kind of the nuances of that item. Seminars, putting on seminars maybe that really talk about the application and engagement with industry with these concepts, really focused on that. Post-pandemic, what can we get, how can we leverage what we've gone through and emerging out of, what could we get away with, or what could we push into that we may not have been able to even think about. The big one there was online courses that were passed around. And then the concept of badging, not necessarily certificates, but having groups of classes that say that, you know, that I've went through this. It's kind of not quite, but this was my way of interpreting what the group was saying was if you probably don't remember, I'm dating myself now, but you would go through the Microsoft, there's education programs that you could go through, and you'd have these certifications that you would get through a certain level. Maybe that was kind of some of the ideas on the badging concept. And then the last one was decision making, in the concept of the world that we live in, where full ambiguity, uncertainty, volatility, and change are monikers we could put on industry in general, especially in today, especially after the last 3 years. And the reality is these students, I think it's not a far stretch to say that these students in general don't do well in those categories when they're given a problem, but not necessarily the prescribed way of handling or attacking the problem. So it kind of comes back to that critical thinking skills and how do we prepare a student in the context that they're going to face ambiguity, they're going to face uncertainty, volatility, and change. So how do we deal with that? What does it take to inform decision makers? So things like data, strategy, risk premiums, analytical frameworks, those kind of pieces we were talking about, including or dealing with in the curriculum. And then how does the agribusiness program answer or address these questions? Kind of some of the outputs that we were thinking there was a curriculum development discussion, talking about what are some of the outcomes that need to be from a program learning outcomes level. What's the industry survey or perspective on these individual components, and then a national survey. Something's missing on that last one. I'm sorry, but I don't remember the details on that. Do you recall, Scott?
And more, they've been work with department heads and curriculum.
Gotcha. So these are my thoughts. I want to make sure that you understand that I didn't have a chance to run them by my colleagues, although they may or may not agree with me, but I don't want to put words in their mouth. Although we have covered this first one, we are going to push back on that AgriMass survey and push into areas that we really need to get more numbers on. We've already talked about, we have the strategy to do that, and we're going to start pushing that sometime about mid-September, when school gets back in, kind of everybody gets rolling again, and we can get those pieces pushed a little bit harder. We think there's opportunities to put a challenge grant together and include bigger topics, bigger perspectives, but also more people. And then we want to definitely continue the discussion within the academy, but also we think that there's a lot to discuss. I mean, this is the friendly crowd. When you get into the difficult crowd is when you talk about changing the agribusiness curriculum, when you go and talk to your faculty at large, who is made up from everywhere from an agribusiness individual to a water resource person to a natural resource to a production to a, there's varying perspectives on what's important, as we saw, and that's where we never looked at. It might be interesting to add as we go forward, the faculty, what's their specialty area, agribusiness versus natural resources or other. And then we definitely want to continue this conversation with professionals. We want to get with managers and trainers in particular. For example, it's one thing to talk to the recruiters or talk to the CEO. It's another thing to talk to the individual that, look, I've got a corporate HR person that gives me people and they get hired somewhere, and then all of a sudden I get plopped a freshly minted bachelor's degree graduate, now it's my responsibility to train this individual. I think that would be a really interesting conversation of how do we engage with that first level manager, if you will, and definitely the recruiters components. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening to those. This is not intended necessarily, I'll take some questions or comments if you have them, but mostly it was to set the stage for the bigger discussion and also set the stage for Brianna's comments here. So.
All right, thank you, Aaron. And I really appreciated learning more about the survey and preliminary results. I know I was taking notes with some questions and discussion for later. But right now I do want to welcome Brianna Arataberry. She's the West Region Digital Adoption Lead for Innovation and Technology Adoption for Nutrien Ag Solutions. And prior to that role, she had experience as a talent recruiter in the Western region for Nutrien Ag Solutions. So Brianna, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I am the digital adoption lead for the West region of Nutrien Ag Solutions based in Fresno, California. So right up the road, about 5 hours. And before this role, I was the recruiter and sales trainer for Nutrien Ag Solutions for the same geography I oversee now. With that, I was involved in recruitment from seasonal employees, freshly graduated individuals pursuing a crop consultant type career, all the way to senior leadership I was recruiting for. So I had the whole spectrum. I also was in charge of a 3-tiered sales training program for all new hire crop consultants, as well as our internship program that was geared towards juniors and seniors to prepare them for graduation. And if successfully completed of our internship program, we would offer them a full-time position with the company. So I wore a lot of different hats within that role. I was in the recruiter and sales trainer role for 4 years. And prior to that, I was a crop consultant myself. I worked in Oxnard, California, which is in Ventura County, about 45 minutes north of that Los Angeles border. And I walked strawberries and citrus and avocados, bell peppers and celery. So I went to school at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Ride High Mustangs, and received my bachelor's of science in crop science and my minor in ag business. I then started with crop production services 2 weeks after graduation in July of 2013 and have been with the company ever since. So I have a lot of different experiences based off of those hats that I've worn throughout the 9 years with the company. And I can say that, yes, the pandemic did inhibit us from doing activities that we were used to doing in regards to engagement in the classroom setting, doing club events, and then of course, recruitment efforts and engagement on campuses. However, business was as usual for us in the field. Our crop consultants were still out talking to growers. And so we really didn't feel that huge burden of the pandemic in all aspects of our company that other industry sectors did. I myself went remote and worked from home, but I can say my husband's a crop consultant and it was business as usual for him. And so having that hybrid approach is extremely beneficial to industry members like myself, knowing that we're going to have individuals that stay remote and we're going to have people that are coming back into the office. And that same goes with our colleges and our universities. That hybrid approach, I do not think is going to be going away anytime soon. And so us as industry have to be ready for that. With Generation Z, they want to stay at home or close to home upon graduation, as Aaron alluded. And they like the comforts of the environment that they're used to. Therefore, soft skills is what is going to set them apart from those job opportunities or internship opportunities, since they're limiting themselves on where they're willing to go for that internship, for that entry-level position. If they're not necessarily willing to relocate, they really need to take into consideration what's going to set themselves apart from the other candidates for that position. For example, the first thing that I notice is a strong handshake and eye contact. If you come with confidence, that exudes into your social cues. You can talk to any generation within the workforce. And as we all know, we have all 4 generations in the workforce right now in the agriculture industry. And being able to look someone that is a baby boomer in the eye goes a long way. Being able to communicate with Gen X and talk, football, talk industry talk, but also sell yourself, quote unquote, goes a long way. And so having those social cues identified and acknowledged are going to assist them in landing that job, whether it's a 12-week internship program or if it's their first salary-based position. Before I move on, are there any questions on what I just covered? Yes, sir.
So what I gathered is that the table stakes is the major and like the college experience.
Mhm.
The marginal benefit is those soft skills.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, to gain those soft skills is to pursue mentorship opportunities with industry members, job shadow opportunities, and of course, those internships that do come available. Having a mentor is going to set your students apart tenfold. And having a third party individual that's unbiased, where they can share situations or concerns that they're up against, and they don't want to go to mom and dad, or they don't want to go to a counselor for. Having someone within the industry that is willing to assist your students is going to greatly set them apart from their competition. And I know myself and many of my colleagues at other companies within the ag sector are more than happy to assist in that mentor opportunity. That's how you get your foot in the door and start networking. And oftentimes finding those mentors are through club activities that our students are participating in, are going to different networking nights at the campus. Those are also offered in virtual settings, like a little social or what have you. I've participated in several in the last couple of years. And it's just, again, encouraging your students to think outside the box on how to build that rapport and network with industry members so they're better set up when it comes to going to a career fair and handing in that resume or going for their first job interview. Being able to understand the diverse group of individuals they're going to be talking to as well, and how to look someone in the eye and read their social cues again, and present the information to them in a fashion that is going to be most tangible and palpable. So in ag, we have a lot of kinesthetic learners. We have auditory and visual, but the most farmers are kinesthetic learners. So our students need to understand who they're talking to and what that individual, what the individual's learning habits are.
So, Brianna, if I heard you talk about mentorship,
Mhm.
and I think all of us at our universities have clubs that students engage with at varying levels. Some students want it for the resume, other students actually engage, and I think recruiters can tell the difference. But when I heard you talking about mentoring, I thought, I wonder if there are any universities that do formal mentorship for their juniors or seniors with industry that's set up by the institution as opposed to just letting that evolve naturally. Have you seen any of that happening, or do you think institutions can play a role in setting some of those up?
I've seen it professor dependent.
Okay.
It is those that are typically counselors or advisors to those seniors and have those relationships with industry where these mentorships are established. For example, Karen Watts was mine. And I met her at a career fair at Cal Poly, and she is the one that assisted me in landing my first role. But I met her on campus through a professor. And so it's independent that I have, or independently ran, I have seen most success with mentorships being set up. And those mentors are the ones that are assisting on talking about buying motives and how to, go through the sales process depending on your audience. talking about different personalities that you're going to be dealing with. The DISC assessment, for example, is something we have all new hires go through in Nutrient Ag Solutions, so they understand how they operate and then who they're going to be dealing with as well.
Which assessment did you say?
The DISC assessment, DISC. That right there opens the door and window for a better understanding of yourself and then who you're dealing with, not only in your own company, but external individuals as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to address one of these questions. I come from a small university, and one way that we get the mentors into the students, like we start a business startup competition. So they actually start a business, and then the mentors are actually the judges, and they work on the individual teams and so forth. So the winner gets like 25,000 seed money and things like that. But when we're in the land of big ones, USC, UCLA, and all these other ones, so we have to try to be creative and have to start a business.
How old are those students, or what year are they?
They're juniors and seniors,
Okay.
and we require them to kind of have an internship as well. And we always say everybody's smart, but can you work in a team environment? And so those soft skills really kind of set them apart.
And mentors assist in setting realistic expectations upon entering the workforce. Oftentimes, as a recruiter, I would hear in an interview hiring a new hire, I want to be a manager in 2 years. And having that mentorship set up for them to understand the reality doesn't set them up for failure in that interview process, because that's an off-putting example of when someone does not do their homework on the company that they're working for, or taking the time to understand the industry that they're exploring as an option for an actual career. Having someone to talk about those types of items will eliminate potentials of being eliminated from being chosen as a candidate. And so having mentors set up or just industry involvement on a regular fashion within your classroom, I think is step one, whether it's in a hybrid virtual situation or in person. I would also suggest, knowing that we did get out of a pandemic, still happening for that matter, exploring the option about discussing stress management and how you handle it personally, how our students should handle it, and then what our growers or our customers are doing to handle that stress. Inflation, supply chain issues, commodity prices, these are all stress factors in our external customers day to day. And being able to understand their buying motives and how they slightly have changed since years past will go a long way. That's where understanding if you're dealing with a kinesthetic learner, a visual or auditory will also assist. And then also change management. There's a great program called ProSci, and I would suggest exploring different modules or options that are available to assist the students in understanding how change can directly impact them, but also their employer for that matter, potential employer, and how you must make sure you fully comprehend if people are aware of changes that are occurring around them. The first item is awareness. Change management and stress management will tremendously set them apart in understanding what soft skills they need to come into to land that entry-level position or that internship for that matter. ProSci, PROSCI. And there's actually headquarters in Loveland, Colorado. It is not, however, we do have our managers like myself go through it. It's a week-long course if you do the full-fledged session. And it has tremendously assisted us in the change that we're having within our company as well. We're moving to a different ERP system, which is a huge lift. We are implementing digital offerings, which I'm in charge of, and I'm bringing technology to baby boomers down to millennials. and how to handle that. And so change management and stress management courses have really assisted myself, but also the likes of our new hires as well, who were onboarded in the pandemic. 2 of my direct hires were hired on in 2020, and I onboarded them all via Teams. It took 18 months for them to actually meet their counterparts in person. And so I completely understand the struggles of doing things virtually, but still getting the same impact that you would by doing things in person, pre-pandemic world. Any other questions or items that are off topic? Yes.
So one thing I'm curious about is still that degree being table stakes, and it's just curiosity, maybe I'm not putting it too much, but it seems like universities put a bunch of resources and differentiation, rankings, all that kind of stuff. And what it sounds like, and maybe there's a pre-screening process, so that's all done outside of it, but like that doesn't seem to be as important as the one person connection. So I'm just curious, why is it perceived that those kinds of things are kind of, is in fact been screened out already once they get to the interview, or how's the process of seeing that degree with the GPA or those other things as kind of using table stakes? I'm trying to look for some, but kind of the table stakes and not the differentiation.
See, I'm on the fence when it comes to that, because to me, having that degree shows that you are a hard worker and you're willing to put forth the effort to obtain that degree. And it's not easy for most. And so that's where GPA, I don't think necessarily tells the whole story. But your work ethic and what you do outside of the classroom speaks volumes. And so if you can show that you can obtain that degree by doing an internship or working part-time, being involved in, campus activities, and really highlighting how you can balance work and personal life, that's what sets you apart to me. And so I would not say that for me, the degree is just table stakes. I think it's the beginning of chapter 1. And then it's up to that student to tell their story about how they got the degree, what they did to maximize their experience on campus, and then why they should be considered for that position based off of their past experiences. Yes.
Do you, I've had other employers come in that they do, you look at certain programs of certain colleges and kind of treat them, students from those places higher than other places, kind of as a start as who you're going to interview?
Yeah. I would have to say I was the same role as a recruiter. I was on more than 30 campuses in the western part of the US annually, and I had my go-to universities as well as community colleges that I recruited from, because their departments set themselves apart, especially with hands-on learning. We can all read about what we should be doing, but until you apply it, that's where you're going to see who is the best fit for that position. And so if there's opportunities where our students could work on the campus farm or work in the accounting department, for example, and show that they're applying their knowledge that they learned in the classroom to actually real life situations, that's where I saw the separation of students. Yes, it is my alma mater, but I will say Cal Poly does a great job with the learn by doing philosophy, because it exposes the students to industry expectations and requirements for them to be successful with that degree in hand.
So earlier you made a mention of Gen Z really wants to be at home, wants to work virtually at home. So how are you approaching that from a nutrient perspective when you're going out and recruiting and looking, potentially to hire? Are you changing job descriptions in order to get the top? So how are you approaching it from a nutrient perspective?
Oh my goodness. So even our onboarding and interview process is completely different now. It's all virtual for the instead of a phone screening interview, it's a video screening interview. The job descriptions have changed in regards to some of the qualifications, but not all. Gen Z is very similar actually to Gen X. Their top characteristics are grit, tenacity, and perseverance. And so, yes, they want to stay close to home, but they're not scared of hard work. And so, keeping that in mind, we've actually built out a new program at Nutrien, and it's called the Emerging Talent Program. And it's a 3-year program where we hire recent grads and we show them all aspects of our business because they didn't have an opportunity to have internships during the pandemic. And so having exposure to all factors and sectors of our business, whether it's retail, wholesale, the turf and ornamental business versus conventional agriculture, we're trying to give them a well-rounded experience and allow them to find what their passion is and where it lies. And so programs like these that have been recently established, we just kicked off our first cohort this year, is allowing us to engage with Gen Z in a different way than we've had with millennials, and then of course, Gen X, boomers, et cetera. And so just changing our mentality that you're gonna get, a placement in a retail location, you're gonna start walking fields, calling on growers, and working in the warehouse a couple days a week. We're now taking a different approach and making sure, because they have not had that opportunity in the last 2 years, to do a different format to encourage and introduce different opportunities they may not have known about because of the limiting factors that they've been up against in the pandemic.
So we've talked a lot about your new hires. I'm curious how next level hiring is different. Clearly, you've got a limited part. Some of the things you talk about with evaluating new hires out of college is because they have a limited set of experiences. Once they're out, are there different ways that you evaluate soft skills or expect technical knowledge to come into play? And is the recruiting different for those, or do you do still Zoom screening and all those?
We still do the Zoom screening before they're brought face-to-face with the hiring manager. So that is the same across the board. It's just a new set of parameters that we have within the company. However, we have a lot of internal opportunities for professional development to assist our new hires along the way. So recruitment is still the same, whether it's middle management, entry level, it's going to be the same process. However, a lot of word of mouth and poaching occurs more often than not with those management or higher level positions, because those individuals that are enticing to us to bring on board typically are a shining light in the industry for a reason, and they're with a competitor. And so poaching occurs on a more regular basis than it has in years past. We don't necessarily bet money on a new candidate that we're not sure of anymore. We go for those top dogs that we know are going to succeed in the company because of their success thus far in the field. With internal programs that assist those along the way, we have through SAP a learning module where there's professional development courses our employees can take at their leisure. We have different professional development opportunities through our leadership program based out of Loveland. And it ranges from selling the Nutrien Way, which is our new sales training program, all the way up to how to handle that change management with ProSci. And we bring in a third party and discuss the situations that we're up against, not only in the industry, but as a company as a whole. And so we never shy away from providing opportunities to our employees to do things on their own time or be a part of an actual program or session that engages them in different ways outside of their day-to-day.
And if anyone on Zoom has any questions, you're welcome to add those. I know we have at least one current undergraduate student on as a participant. So if they have any feedback or thoughts that they would like to add?
You can stop sharing.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, no,
Oh.
we can't.
1 second.
So you're not muted, Victoria, but we can't hear you.
There's a volume up on the computer.
It is.
I've been
Weird.
there before. My volume.
Yeah, we're on 100.
Try again.
Can you hear me now? Can you see the chat?
She said she's going to try signing off and then back on.
While she's doing that, I have another question.
Oh,
Yes.
So, how
Maybe
much
it's
do
not
you
me then.
check, references anymore? So you do the virtual, and then they come in to do an interview, and then you go ahead and check references or not?
I do. Well, in my past life, yes.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, it was nutrient there.
us as Nutrien, absolutely, and especially with those middle management or similar type roles, absolutely references are utilized. Cover letters are a huge deal as well. Oftentimes I find that millennials have heard about cover letters, but not necessarily have ever used one. But it is something that we appreciate, especially because it's that introduction of who you are and your experience. Of course, it's not needed in all cases, especially when it comes to an internship. But at entry level, it just shows that you put forth the effort. And so I always encourage graduates or soon-to-be graduates to start building a cover letter and getting comfortable with that vernacular. I find that written communication has not necessarily been a large focus of the younger generation. And I will receive emails that look like text messages. And that right there is something that can be a conversation for improvement. Being able to have a salutation, a greeting for that matter, and then building out an email is something that everyone needs to make sure that they can do before graduating. Because communication with colleagues and industry members, at least in Nutrien, starts right off the bat upon hire. And we cannot afford having text messages sent as emails. But references are referred to and utilized.
And emails are still the main method for people to interact with each other and within the company, along with, I mean, talking directly, but when you're, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's what I see in other companies that even though, you know, people are not big in emails are still how industry communicates with each other.
Absolutely. Emails, of course, we've utilized Microsoft Teams and Zoom more than often than not, but email communication is first and foremost. But being able to pick up the phone as well and calling someone seems to be something that our younger generation is not necessarily comfortable with. And so I always say the first 8 seconds are hard, getting up that courage to call. But once those 8 seconds are over, you're good. You got the wiggles out, the phone's ringing, and then you can start your conversation. Make sure you have bullet points of what you want to talk about so you don't forget because you are nervous or you're not sure if they're going to pick up the phone and you're just thinking of the next steps. But phone etiquette is a forgotten art. Setting a voicemail, for that matter, is a forgotten art. And so those little nuances is where a mentor can come into play and give those tips and tricks upon an interview or upon first day of an internship. Those little items matter to industry folk. We take it for granted or, second nature, but it's something that we need to remind Gen Z of as they're entering the workforce.
So a comment I would add on that, if you're looking for a book to kind of go through those different tips, it's called Bridging the Soft Skills Gap. It's by Bruce Tolkien. Bruce is great. He's a phenomenal, done a lot of research on how different operations, interact with each other. And it's all based in. So this book is something that he has picked up on, that phone etiquette, for example, just how do you answer a phone? Emails, but that, bridging the soft skills gap. It's good.
How do they do on Zoom?
They or in regards to the students or?
Yeah, so is the quality of the Zoom interaction, these are digital natives, presumably they're really good at those things. Is it phone because that's an older technology that nobody really uses these like this very much, or so I'm just curious whether on Zoom they are, presenting themselves professionally, or is that an area too that they have to think about? How do I adapt this to a business environment?
They're very savvy when it comes to how to navigate Zoom or Teams. The choice of attire sometimes is questionable, and
Or having posters in the background that
Yes.
shouldn't be seen.
correct.
Or having the roommate walk half naked behind them.
Yes. And so again, social cues, knowing your audience, being able to set a fake background up or a virtual background up or a blur for that matter, putting on a collared shirt or a blouse. Those are items that we look for in the introductory video screening interview, but they all know how to navigate it. It's just how they present themselves is at times a challenge.
Yeah, it's not the technology.
It's not the technology.
It's the way that they approach the
Yes.
person on the other end.
Correct.
Yeah, I've enrolled our new freshmen the last 3 years via Zoom. And so sometimes you'll have, they'll be sitting in bed, or you'll have a male student without his shirt on. And it's, not even thinking this is your first impression that you're making as you're enrolling into college.
Victoria, do you mind doing a sound check?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Well,
No.
we have one more speaker option to try. So we've gone through two
Okay.
different,
I think-
try now.
Can you hear me now?
No,
Taking your notice,
so
Did
these
you
are
change
our
that?
options. So I have tried all three. Let's go back to this one. Try one more time, Victoria.
Hello, can you hear me?
Not yet. So we have a soundboard up here and we're not sure. Oops.
Try saying something again.
Can you hear me?
No.
This is the default speaker that was on when we first started. So these are our options, Scott. It kind of seems to me like this is the one we would want,
That's display.
because this is a USB.
Choose the connection.
Right, try again.
Hello, can you hear me?
No.
I'm so sorry. This is a conference laptop that none of us have experience with.
Did anybody
It's
else?
good.
Yes, yeah. Kate Brooks said she can hear her via Zoom. So it's our audio.
Idiot.
Yeah.
I just need to type her question in the chat then.
Yeah, maybe she can type it in the chat.
Victoria, if you're able to just type into the chat. Unfortunately, I think that's the only way we're gonna be able to connect. So while we're waiting, I was wondering how, those of you at other institutions, how you have tried to connect and find out what industry really desires from your students. Are you doing surveys? Are you talking to some of the main companies that your students are going to? What have you tried these last few years?
And I know all community colleges by law have to have an industry advisory group, and we have to meet twice a year. So one of the things we discuss with them is what their needs are. And soft skills come up every year, and we discuss with them, what types of soft skills and so forth. So that's one of the ways. Plus, then each week at our Ag Biz Club, we have a speaker from industry come, which we have nutrient come every year. And then we often ask them as a part of it, okay, what are you looking for? What, just like we've been asking today, and then those speakers cover the soft skills and stuff. So we learn about it, but the students then also learn about it.
Our college has it's quibbles I can have with this. College has a survey they do every year. We have our AGBIZ program is about a quarter of the college graduates, so it's like, well, how do we know who's for the respondent? Are they talking about an AGBIZ graduate or an animal science graduate or a crop science graduate? The communication is high throughout all of that. So our college responded with a first year science communications. To try and we hear industry. Everybody has to take this science communications. But yeah, I think it's 5-year survey.
What do they teach in that course? How do they practical things so that students practice their communication or their soft skills? Or
yeah, it's brand new, so it hasn't fully. The company hasn't set yet, and I'm not that fully, but it's how to find reliable sources, how to communicate with a wide audience, from producers to technical users. And this is communication. This is some foundation. Hopefully can get built on in second.
We offer an ag business, well, it's communication for agricultural business, and it's in our ag communications department, and it used to be a required course for all of our students. Now they can take it as an elective course, and many of them do. But in that course, they are writing memos, writing cover letters, writing professional emails, with the idea that it's giving them some of those communication skills and tools. They're developing PowerPoints, presenting in front of their class. And the advisory council, that's really great to hear about, because that's something our department has talked about, and we've kind of gone through the structure of, okay, what would it look like to develop this advisory council? How do we invite people? What would be the role? And we go through various rounds of, okay, this is the draft plan that we have, and then we've never really pushed it out the door. But I know I've gotten calls from industry, and sometimes they're saying, we'd really like you to teach a few other things or to make some changes, because we have been having good success going to the College of Business. And so trying to figure out what do we need to do so that we can.
I encourage you to take that next step. We have to do it by law, but we have a great relationship with the members of we try to keep 10 or 12 on, and they rotate every 3 years. They're on for 3-year time periods, and so we learn a lot from them, and they also learn what we're doing. So it also helps because they know, hey, this is what these graduates are getting. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The two-way communication.
There's any opportunity this next year to do group projects or team partner activities, I highly encourage that within the classroom, because it brings different perspectives, and they have to learn to work as a team and understand each other's backgrounds may be different and quite diverse, and how you handle each other's opinions and then apply it to a project is going to be a perfect example of how they're going to deal with real life projects in their career. Never once did I think I'd be in technology. I thought I would be in the fields until I retired. And here I am in the digital space, and I talk to project managers on a daily basis. I talk to computer engineers and coders for that matter. And then I'm also the liaison to the field. So I'm in communication with so many different individuals from so many different backgrounds. Being able to have that collaboration and do it well takes practice, but it's something that we can start in the classroom and get them to engage with their fellow students that may not be in their friend group either. Get them out of their comfort zone.
How many new hires require a bachelor's degree versus an associate's or just a high school degree?
It depends on the job at hand. So for example, if you're in California and you want to be a pest control advisor, which is the equivalent to a crop consultant, but you have to have a state license in order to write an agricultural recommendation for a customer. We hire individuals that have 2 years at a community college, but they must pair that with 2 years of work experience. Or they can get their bachelor's of science for the job. So it's dependent on the position, but we're not going to turn anyone away that has an associate's versus a bachelor's. As long as they're meeting that 2 years of work experience requirement, then we'll keep our options open.
We've talked a lot about undergrad, but what about graduate students? So from nutrient, you go in, looking at master's, PhD, I mean, how do you approach that? Do you hire graduates? We do, and mostly it's for those senior level management positions, marketing managers, for example. Our marketing manager roles are different than the word marketing. They're not doing, advertisement efforts. It's all, P&Ls and sales and understanding supply chain issues. That requires a graduate degree. PhDs, if you're going to be on the R&D side of our product line, Loveland Products, or our recent acquisition with Actigrow, those are PhDs. Again, a lot of recruitment is done via poaching. A lot is done through word of mouth in regards to who you've had experiences with in the industry and you're trying to poach from a university, for example, or if you're going to a competitor. But we do post online on our external job board, but oftentimes it's word of mouth on how we find our higher leveled individuals when it comes to graduate and PhDs. So for the marketing managers, those Masters of Science in Agricultural Economics or an MBA?
MBA is preferred.
MBA is preferred. Okay. I just wanted to confirm that because I always have conversations with undergraduates who are thinking like, hey, I'm going to go get a master's of econ and I'm going to, have a fast track to a senior level manager position. I always tell them no. You're better off doing work, get an MBA because that in industry is kind of what is desired.
Absolutely. So that work experience, and then if you go back and get your MBA, that's the cherry on top.
That's what's okay.
Do you all consider Masters of Agribusiness any kind of similar to that MBA?
We do.
Okay.
We do. Absolutely. But I will say, often times than not, they have their MBA when they assume that role.
Okay.
Whatever reason, there's 3 letters. In that particular order.
That
order. MBA.
I want to introduce Victoria, and I apologize, I can't share her picture on the screen. I've tried multiple times, and when I share the screen, I think she probably sees her picture again, but we do not in this room. So Victoria says, hi everyone, I'm going into my 2nd year in the Masters of Science program in Agricultural Economics at Purdue. I currently do research for the Office of Academic Programs within, oops, sorry, Victoria. Within the College of Agriculture on the extracurricular activities that our graduates are participating in. It's a college goal for each graduate to participate in at least one extracurricular by the time they graduate, currently sitting at 91%. And I think you mentioned it's not necessarily just participating though in the extracurriculars, it's taking then on that additional time to match yourself with a mentor, taking additional
Absolutely.
opportunities and experiences that being involved in an extracurricular activity can bring.
Absolutely. Being a self-starter is going to get you a long ways and having that initiative. Yes, we don't necessarily throw our new hires to the wolves. I hate to say like, go sell, here's a set of car keys and a cell phone, go do your job. We don't take that approach. It doesn't work. That's been proven many, many times. But having that self-awareness and being a self-starter allows the company to have that confidence in you after you're hired on, knowing that you're not going to be floundering. You are assigned a mentor, and you have someone to go to, but having that initiative and not waiting in the office to be told what your next steps are, and just doing what you know needs to be done, or going and assisting where you see there needs to be more hands than one on a specific project. That's what we look for, is being self-confident, a self-starter, and having that self-awareness more than anything. So anytime that we can recruit from universities where we do have that engagement with that hands-on experience, that's where we find our top candidates.
I have a question that came up as you were sharing results and from your discussion group, and that you mentioned badges. And so that's something that K-State just this fall is piloting a program where they will start offering badges, and so departments or programs can put in proposals of what they would like to offer badges for, and then as well the courses that would go into that. Kind of where I think the university is stuck is, do you offer, do all the courses in a badge have to be for credit, or can some of them be not for credit? And then if you earn a badge, can that later be retroactively, can you receive credit? And so there's a lot of unknowns, at least at K-State, on how this might work. But it is something that they're working towards.
Is it badge like a certificate or is it different?
No, so it's different than a certificate. I mean, it could be just one course would earn you a badge, but usually it's a pairing of a couple courses, but something less stringent requirements than a certificate. And then the thought is you could put these badges like on LinkedIn. And so someone would see you had a badge in ag sales or.
So, and I liken it back to, back in the 90s, Microsoft had these kind of concepts that they were certifications. They were independent academic models, but they were for software people that said, I went through this level of training that, and it's not me saying I've done it. I've actually got something that says I've fulfilled that area. I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit about that. That was his group, I think, if I remember correct. But there are some challenges in managing that, and I think the group raised some of those issues when they talk about it.
There's an obvious one is what happens when every class has a badge attached to it. And it's so many. But more importantly, I think there's an idea that there needs to be some assessment that potentially could be standardized, so that, if you get a badge in financial acumen from Kansas State, that it says you can actually do something with financial acumen, and similarly at Purdue. And so what we had talked a little bit about amongst everyone in WIRA is we're all doing these and all measuring them differently. There's some advantage to giving your students a badge that gives your students an advantage when they get hired. But what if we came together and said, what would that potentially look like? And similarly, why does a Purdue student's badge have to come from Purdue? Why not have opportunities to share these across universities to make these more available and allow students to pursue these wherever the benefit is the highest.
Well, I like the idea of the standardized tests or standardized piece, because that also then moves it out of that arena of it doesn't have to be a class for credit. So your guy that's taking 1 or 2 classes, got a young family, working 30 to 60 hours a week, trying to improve his or her life, could get some of these types of things by self-study, right? Going back to the whole, my dad got his training for civil engineering by mail correspondence, right?
I think we're doing a little bit of that in Saskatchewan as well. I think some of what the question is who is the student that's wanting that badge? Is it our traditional student? I'll talk about this in an hour and a half. Or is it somebody coming back to reskill or retool that wants to add on to a degree that they had 10 years ago? You know, so I think that's where the question of, are all of our degrees going to get muddled with a badge, or is the degree enough, right? If you're in the degree program, you need all these badges, or do you create a different path for a different client?
And should it even matter if it's content related? What do we care whether it's a student, an alumni, or somebody that's not otherwise affiliated? I mean, if we're gonna have a badge that means something, it's gotta be agnostic as to what the background of the person is the badge is.
As long as they're willing to pay their $19.99 plus shipping and handling.
Yeah.
No, see,
All right, well, we have officially come to the end of our allocated time, but we've had some excellent discussion, and I'm sure many of you will be around the rest of the day and tomorrow to continue that. I just want to make sure we give a big thank you to Brianna and Aaron and Scott for their work on this survey and everything so far.
Thank you for your time.